This is the All-Star Networking Show with your host, Cathy Paper.
Welcome to the All-Star Networking Show. So excited today to have what I call a repeat guest. Numerous great reviews and people saying, hey, we want to hear more about your conversation. So joining me today again is Eggert. And Aaron, let everybody know still what you're up to in case we've got some new listeners, and let's get going. We were already doing a little pregame.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Paper. I appreciate it. I am, again, Aaron Eggert. I am the founder and Chief Vision Officer of Coalition 9. I also we started a new foundation called the C9 Gives Foundation. So I'm the executive director of that. And I'm also a fellow podcast host like yourself of the Power of Nine podcast. So I got my hands in a few things.
Nice. I love it. Well, explain, I've been thinking about groups and community, when I think about a network, and I was just at a networking breakfast this morning, where one of the things I try to do is to sit at a different table sometimes so that I mix up my network a little bit. Explain for people what C9 is, or the kind of the power of a group in your view.
Yeah, I think peer groups is not a new thing, right? Like, I think peer groups have been used through society in a lot of different ways. Some of them are faith driven, some of them are business driven, some of them are personal driven, some of them are support groups. Like, groupthink is super powerful. And when done intentionally, you can build some really deep relationships. I mean, even to the point to where, I don't really love the word networking in our community, because to me, it feels a little transactional. Yes. To where I want to really go for depth and not width. And even the conversations that, we handpick our facilitators to guide these conversations. I don't look for anybody who's done a bunch of really cool stuff in the 90s, leading a business and stuff like that, being a former CEO. I'm looking for people that are relevant, keep their saws sharp, and just has a super high level of curiosity to be able to really create that positive impact in each other's lives. I think, you can't just go all business, or you can't go all personal. Business and personal is a flywheel. And now, especially with the world we live in, it all intersects and is symbiotic. And so I would say we're probably 70-30 on the business to personal conversation, business centric 70%. But yet, if you have something going on in your personal life and it's having an effect on you deeply, it's going to have an effect on your business. And so we want to be able to try and meet people where they're at.
Excellent. Okay, so let's, it's funny when you said you don't use the word networking in your groups. I, of course, cringe that, well, this is called the All-Star Networking
I know
show.
that.
No, I know, but you get people's attention with networking, because if I say relationships, they think it's about dating.
Yeah, I think, but the way I kind of look at networking is that, if you're so let's use your event that you talked about this morning, right? Like, you went to an event, you probably met some people, and I would say that is a great networking activity, right? Like, you've probably met, it's almost like quantity over quality, but then there's going to be a couple people, and I bet you probably can think off the top of your head, you met a couple of new people. You're like, you know what? I just like to get to know that person better. And I'm going to reach out to that person. To me, that transcends networking. Networking, I think, is kind of like a point-to-point connection. Hey, yeah, I've met that person or whatever. And there's a lot of people I've met, quote unquote, networking. I just feel like with the community that we've built, it goes a little bit deeper than that, because of the way that we curate the conversations and the way we build our groups. And the way that, even from an event standpoint, like, we really are intentional with how we go for depth and not width. And we want to create a really welcoming, safe environment that people feel like they are really, truly part of something a little bit bigger than themselves. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with networking at all. Like, I feel like there's a time and a place for all of this, right? And I just feel, and there's a lot of your listeners, and even the people that we have mutual friends with. I mean, it is painful to go out and try and meet new people, even though, and you think about the people that are in the fractional world that are, former CFOs and they're going into that world. Business development is not part of in their DNA. They've never had to do it. They're not trained salespeople or marketers. And so to be able to go out and have to create a space for them to feel welcome and things like that really needs to be done thoughtfully.
Yeah. No, I love the idea of depth and not width. And I'm thinking about, so this group I think has like 300 members in it. And I probably know half of them, maybe. I
Mm-hmm.
always look at
Mm-hmm.
everybody's name tags and,
Mm-hmm.
I know just a little bit about them. But what's interesting as you're talking about this depth, not width, is there were like three people that I said, oh, we should get together. Let's
Mm-hmm.
connect up, sort of that taking it that one step further. So depth and not width. How do you find, and you said 70-30 business to personal. How do you find in your groups people kind of get comfortable sharing? Like, does that
Speed
just
to
happen? Is that the facilitator?
Yeah. So every group we've got 24 groups, 237 members. Of those 24 groups, I lead a group. We've got a couple people that lead multiple groups. But other than that, everyone's got their own group. And I think that it's a little bit of an art to create a safe space. So that's why it is truly like every group goes as the facilitator goes. Like if the facilitator's having a rough go of it, that typically it's going to have a trickle down effect to the group. But then also speed to trust is different for everybody, and you have to respect that. And I'm the type of person that I trust somebody implicitly the first time I meet them. I have zero reason to not trust them. But if they break that trust, good luck getting it back. Like I am very, very slow to ever earn that trust back. Now, some people, they're really slow to trust, and it might take them 3, 4, 5 sessions to get to that point to where they're really going to share what's on their heart and on their mind at the truest depth, through vulnerability, through that transparency. And we have to be able to be thoughtful and respectful of all of that and know that that space is going to be created when that person is ready to have that created for them.
Mm-hmm. I love that phrase of speed to trust. I'm the strength finder. I've got woo, and
Yeah.
if you haven't taken the strength finders, I love that as a way to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think the speed to trust is probably why I'm like, oh, I could make a connection, but to really get to know people, I
Yeah.
probably am a little bit slower, believe it or not. I like
And
it.
that's normal. That actually, that for someone as high on the woo side of things, that is actually pretty normal because you get so invested emotionally into people to where, there might have been some experiences that I don't want to get all like psychological on you,
No,
but
no,
like,
no, I
I
love
think
this.
there's maybe some experiences that you've had in the past that you maybe gotten a little burned on that. And that's going to help, inform your future decisions on how you approach trust and things like that. So I'm surprisingly with what I do and people that know me, woo is very low for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm not, I'm unapologetic in who I am. I'm not for everybody. I get that. I probably swear too much and I'm very opinionated and things like that. But yet, I'm highly competitive. And so to me, I have zero reason not to trust somebody. But if they do break my trust, good luck.
When you say you curate the conversation, Aaron, and again, for people that don't know Coalition 9, in Minnesota, are you any expansion plans?
Not ready to talk about yet, but yeah, we've got some secondary markets we're looking at here.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. But okay, but people in Minnesota, thinking about groups, I know you do events that are open to non-members so that you can come
Mhm.
meet people or see what it's about. When you say curate the conversation, what does that look like in terms of helping people build relationships? Because I do think when I left Best Buy and I joined my first mastermind group through the National Association of Women Business Owners,
Mhm.
I didn't know how to build relationships with people
Mhm.
kind of on that personal and professional level. I,
I think a lot of it comes with the, like I said earlier, like how we hand select our facilitators. It's just they've got our facilitators have such a good way of using their curiosity to be able to bridge that business slash life conversation. I do think like there's no real secret sauce in that. We do have our own facilitation process. We train all of our facilitators on that. We follow this. Every group follows roughly the same process. It is pliable so that we can kind of push it and pull it as we need to make sure that it meets the group's needs. We're always listening to our members about how we evolve the experience. We don't want anything to get stagnant or stale. So we're always trying and push the boundaries a little bit of that. But really, I mean, curiosity is number one. Like it is as simple as if watching body language of someone that may be a little bit shy on the sharing side and picking up on a couple key words that person is saying and just asking a question of saying like, hey, when you say this, tell me a little bit more about what you mean. And that simple question can open up a conversation for someone and make them feel heard. Frankly, you look at our 237 members, I would say the majority, over 50% of our members are introverts. And so introverts are amazing listeners, but typically may not be going out of their way to share. And so when we build a small group of 9 people, they feel like they have their tribe.
Yeah, that's awesome. That word curiosity, I don't know. I love that word. I worry sometimes I'm a little too random on things, but when sort of have you gone to somebody and networked where it was just really random? Either like you need somebody or how have you personally built, and let's call it building a relationship outside of your group for you professionally?
One question. I come with zero. So my thing is I come with zero preconceived notions. I try and do just enough little LinkedIn research to like figure out who they are. A lot of the way our community is built, everything comes through referral. So I do no outbound. I don't reach out to any, because somebody's got a fancy title. I don't go out to them and say, hey, you should be part of Coalition 9. Everybody that comes to Coalition 9 has been referred by a member or a trusted partner or affiliate or something like that. So in that respect, I meet people for the first time all the time. I would say on average, it's 2 to 3 people brand new per week that I meet. And my first question is, just tell me about your story. What's your story? Yeah. And then it's asking questions. And so active listening is the number one thing in curiosity that makes it work. And so if you're not actively listening, if you're just coming in with like you've got a pocket full of questions that you want to ask and they're relatively self-serving, that doesn't help anybody. But if you're asking questions based on what is coming out of that person's mouth in the moment, in the present time, it makes you a better listener. It makes you a better advocate for them. And it helps you in some situations, I might just be like, I don't think time's right for Coalition 9 for you. Like you've got so much stuff going on. You're implementing an ERP system that I've been through in my life. And I think, let's talk about this in Q4. And that way I can be the best thoughtful partner for them rather than try and just push them into a box.
Nice. Active listening. Okay. So I'm an extrovert, not the introvert. And I love how you said introverts are better listeners.
Oh, they are.
Yeah. No, well,
because I'm an extrovert, right? Like the people that I have some of the most appreciation for are the people that are opposite of me, and the people that are introverted. And we've just seen this over and over is that it's just fantastic listeners. But when that person opens their mouth, you need to shut up because that person has something probably relatively wise and profound to say.
How do you know what questions to ask? I think there are people that are listening right now thinking about, okay, I'm in a group or I'm in a one-on-one conversation. Any thoughts on how you get to be a better active listener? Do you keep notes?
I don't keep notes in the moment. I take notes afterwards, and in some situations I save a voice memo on my phone and then I dump it into my CRM just so that I can listen to it and do a quick 30 I can dump 30 seconds onto a voice memo and it'll be 2 pages worth of notes that I typically would have, right? So I want to be really thoughtful about as much information as I can capture that is going to be helpful for the relationship. I'm going to cop out on your question though, paper. Like I feel like it's really hard to give you an answer to something that is so nebulous like a relationship. But when you're meeting somebody, I think going into it, knowing that you have questions that you want to ask is not a healthy way to be actively listening. But if you're there and you have one question and say, tell me a little bit about your story, and they start talking to you about, maybe their personal life, growing up, or, hey, I grew up in this town, ask questions about, some of the most random things. So what were your family dynamics growing up? Was your dad an entrepreneur? Was your mom an entrepreneur? Like, what got you into the entrepreneurial journey from, did you feel like you had this at a young age? It, it could go nine ways to Sunday, but I think when you start loading up questions that you have ready to go, that's when you feel like you've got a little bit of a crutch to fall on. My challenge would be go into any new relationship and have nothing but that one question and just say, tell me your story, but then listen to what that person has to say and tap into maybe a keyword that they say or a situation or experience and dive into that.
Yeah.
Be present.
But okay, well, hold on, because you just did tell people how to be an active listener, in a really great way of, if you're too scripted, I think it shows, right?
Yep. I've sat down with people and they've got a notebook and they've got the questions that they want to ask. And there's 6 or 7 of them and they go right down the line. Yeah. And my goal in that is to try and shake that up a little bit, to rattle their cage a little bit and get them off script, right? Get them off the page to where, it's not prescriptive and it gets them out of their comfort zone a little bit. And that I think is good. That's healthy.
Yeah. I like though that what you said though is look for those keywords, because if you're talking to somebody or you're listening, or even when somebody's struggling, to ask more about that can reveal the deeper conversations to build those relationships. So I think you didn't give a cop out. I think you gave a really good explanation about it. And I think you're an amazing relationship builder. So what you said about you record a voice memo or keep some notes and put it in your CRM is, we all want to be heard and be remembered for things, or feel connected. And I think that's a nice way to, record stuff. What are people up to? What are they working on? So I like that. Let's talk, if you don't mind, I want to hear more about the foundation, what you're up to with that, because I love philanthropy. I can't say the word, but I love philanthropy.
Yeah, so this was always something as if Coalition 9 became a thing and we had enough members that it felt right, philanthropic efforts was going to be something that I wanted us to be aligned with. And I didn't really want to align with another foundation. There's a lot of other foundations out there and a lot of different organizations. Some of them are highly fueled by corporate dollars, which maybe steers the decision-making process. Some of them are aligned with a certain faction of faith or a political something or another. And I wanted to keep everything as agnostic as possible and just reinvest into the community, the greater community, but with a little bit of an emphasis on emerging businesses and small businesses. And so we are in the infancy of the creation of this. So our 501c3 has been approved. We have a board. So we have a 5-person board. I am the executive director of the board, but however, we have Avi Olitsky, who is a former rabbi at Bethel Synagogue, tons of nonprofit experience, works in associations with his new business now. He's our board chair. And so if there's a conflict of interest between Coalition 9 and the foundation, I'll leave the room and he'll lead the conversation and do what's best for the foundation. A lot of the guiding principles that we are building on how we allocate resources and funds and things like that is being worked on right now, but we are staying true to the roots of wanting to stay as agnostic as possible, but putting an emphasis on emerging businesses. But I just think we're in such a good position here with all these members, and there's a lot of people that in my conversations they just don't know how to give back, and there's not the right vehicle for them. And so if we can have an impact and mobilize the Coalition 9 community to have an impact on emerging businesses in the Twin Cities area, it's going to create a flywheel, not only for Coalition 9, but then also to just the greater community of keeping that lifeblood in small business in the Twin Cities healthy and vibrant. And I don't want to turn it into one. I want to keep us small and scrappy. I want to make sure that it emulates who we are from a cultural standpoint with Coalition 9. I don't want to be putting on galas where we're trying to shake people down for, $250,000 or anything like that. I would rather use us and mobilize us the right way and have impact through the genius that we have in the community, and be able to do some really cool things at a greater level.
Excellent. I love that. I know I remembered you were saying you were going to do this. I think it's great. You made a 501(c)(3). You can also tap in through like the Minneapolis or St. Paul Foundation too for any governance or any so that people can get all the credits. Like the group I'm part of, we've given over $1 million to the Minneapolis and St. Paul public schools, their sports programs. And so somehow I think they fused in through there as a way, but just a little side note on that. So I guess I'm just curious, you as the connector or leading these people through their journeys, are you seeing more people meeting outside of the groups? Or are they texting each other? Or I see a lot more tags of people on LinkedIn showing their groups now.
Yeah. So I think summer's hard, right? Like I think and you're probably feeling what we're feeling from an attendance standpoint in summertime is that we need to create environments for people that is not going to be the standard conference room. And that's cool throughout the year. However, I think to keep people engaged with all the stuff that's going on, I would say, a typical member has got kids, or has got a family, and like we just talked before we started recording, I was off the grid for a few days before this, and I don't doubt that that's a normal thing. July is a great month for families to go on vacations and stuff. So we are intentional about making sure our facilitators know that they've got resources to be able to take their groups out and do some things. So we've had groups that are, renting pontoons on Minnetonka and going out for a half day rather than having a session, just letting conversations happen organically. And, that's just one example. People are doing all sorts of different things together in a group setting. And I think communicating outside the half day session per month, we use Slack as part of our community and how we communicate. However, Slack is another app that some people have to download. So when we start a new group, we have a conversation as a group. How do you want to best communicate? Is it email? Typically, no. Is it Slack? People that are Microsoft Teams users or something like that tends to be a little bit of a pain. So yeah, we create some text strings, and even I invested heavily into AI to run the business at the beginning, but we infused in a texting service so that it can communicate with members via SMS. And that's been a really great way for us to be able to not only gather feedback, but also communicate proactively with our members.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Efficient, so that you get to your technology fixed too and learning things. What else would you share with people about just building relationships or the power of things? Because I know we're towards the end. We gotta wrap up on stuff.
I think intentionality, right? Like I think you have to also recognize that not everybody is for everybody. And so when you feel, this, and I would guess your listeners probably know this, when you feel like a little bit of a spark of like, hey, I really dig this person. Like I could spend time with this person, invest in that relationship. I think it's not reasonable for you to have deep relationships with every single person you meet. It's just that it doesn't work. But if there's a handful of people that you meet somebody and you're like, I'd love to get to know that person better. That person's fascinating, or that person is like the polar opposite of me, and I'd love to understand why. Like when those internal cues start coming up and you start, your spidey sense goes off, being like, man, I really dig that person, double down on that. Like your intuition is really strong, and trust that intuition, and surround yourself with the people that fuel that.
I love that. Like trust your intuition. You called it your spidey sense, but
Hmm.
doubling down on it.
Hmm.
And what you said too, not everyone is for everyone. I think when you're building relationships, at least I see people are like, oh, I need quantity, quantity, quantity. And it's okay to be, selective or careful. Um,
I think blending it too, right? Like be thoughtful about how you're using your time, right? Like in some situations you do want to go out there has got to be a little bit of a quantity aspect, because if you don't go out and meet a bunch of new people, you're not going to know who fuels you and who you want to spend time with. So there is a little bit of that, but I think when people start feeling like they need to just keep up with the Joneses on, quantity of networking and going to all these events and seeing and being seen, I'd almost challenge that a little bit of like, hey, just make sure that you're spending your time with the people and the organizations that give you life.
Yes, yes, awesome. Aaron, so good to have you back and
Paper, you're awesome.
talking about all things Coalition 9. We'll put in the show notes how people can find you, find your events. I know you're off the grid up at your cabin and a little kayaking, so we won't
Yeah,
tell them where you live up there.
yeah, yeah.
But this is great, and thank you for all you're doing in the community.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on. I'm a huge fan of your show. I'm a huge fan of all the events and all the things that you have going on. So being able to like just be at an arm's length of some of this stuff means the world to me.
Wait a second, though. Speaking of the events, you were at the event that we had the speaker showcase. So there's going to be one in the fall, and I'll send
All
you the
right, good.
date. And maybe now it's time you have your story and your
Oh
keynote.
boy.
So
Yeah, well, I was watching some of those speakers. You brought in some heavy hitters and stuff like that. Typically, getting up and doing talks is not my jam. I'm more of a Q&A and a panel discussion type person, so I can riff a little bit. But boy, I felt like I'll make this a little bit about you. Like I do think you did a really good job getting that first one up under your belt. I challenged you a little bit on that time frame that you had of getting it promoted. You had a great amount of people in that room, and I think there's a lot of people that are just trying to figure out what their approach is to a talk and stuff, and that created a really healthy, captive environment for them to be able to build a little bit of camaraderie with other early stage speakers.
yes,
Loved
yes.
it.
Well, it's good. It's that you're right. It was the first one under the belt. So for anyone listening, you can check out. I'm about to commit to the date. I've got the
Good.
judges. I've got the venue. I just got to get my gumption up because doing events is
Yep.
not for the faint of heart.
No, it's
Um,
not.
but it's for speakers of all levels, and then we're going to do it by topic so that there'll be a
Cool.
little bit of structure to the days so that it'll be leadership, maybe business acumen, customer service, not just sort of a random, channel surfing of topics. I'll put a
Yeah.
little more structure to that with a little more time. So anyway,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you for
Yeah.
supporting that. Huge fan of you, and we'll check out Coalition 9, but thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Paper. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the All-Star Networking Show with Cathy Paper. If you're interested in being a guest, please contact Cathy at www.rockpaperstar.com.